Before we get into how Roman charioteers built the most complete, all-round strength of any athlete in history, let me ask you something you'll almost certainly get wrong. When a charioteer drove 4 horses at full gallop, what was holding those horses back? It wasn't his hands. It wasn't a harness or a brake, or the chariot itself. What was holding back 4 war horses was his body. Because the Roman charioteer didn't hold the reins the way you'd imagine. He wrapped them around his waist, dug in, and leaned his entire body weight backward against the pull. 4 horses. Well over a ton of panicking muscle. As fast as 40 miles an hour, and the only thing channeling that force was one man's grip. Core, back, and legs, balanced on a wooden plate barely bigger than a doormat. Now think about what that takes. It's not one single heavy lift. Instead, it's minutes of it. 7 laps, around stone-turning posts that snapped chariots in half, with as many as 12 teams crashing for the same inch of track. That is a kind of strength the modern world doesn't even have a name for anymore. We build muscles one at a time, in a mirror, against a bar that never fights back. The charioteer built every muscle at once, against something actively trying to tear him apart. So how strong did you have to be to wear 4 horses, and how on earth did they build a body that could? Subscribe and stay to the end, because it wasn't one exercise. It was an entire forgotten system. The training, the diet, the mind. And the strangest piece of all is what they drank to recover, something no athlete alive today would dare put in their mouth. But first, just how strong did you have to be? Picture the machine he stood in. A Roman racing chariot weighed almost nothing. It was a low frame of wood with a floor of interwoven leather straps, built to flex and spring so it could be flung around corners. It came up to about his waist, so there was no seat and nothing to hold. The driver stood on that springing platform, lashed the reins around his waist, and turned 4 horses by bracing and leaning his body weight into them, one hand free for the whip. 4 horses, several hundred pounds of muscle each, were pulling forward at once. That pull ran down the reins and into his waist, meaning his torso, lower back, hips, and legs were locked in a tug of war against more than a ton of animal that did not want to stop. For 7 laps, around 2.5 miles, while the suspensionless cart hammered every bump up through his knees and spine, and 11 other teams fought him for the inside line at the turning posts, where the smallest mistake folded a chariot into splinters. There was no muscle he could afford to leave weak. The grip, core, back, legs, balance, reflexes had to be all maxed at once for the length of a race. And then again, sometimes race after race, up to 24 times in a single day. This was never strength for the mirror. It was strength to survive. So how do you build a body that can wear 4 horses, with no gym, no weights, and no idea what a dumbbell is? It started before these men were even grown. Most charioteers began as boys, often slaves, bought young and raised by the great racing factions. And a boy did not start with 4 horses. He started with 2. He spent years driving the lighter, slower teams, learning to feel the pull and hold the line, before he ever earned the right to a 4-horse quadriga. The load grew as the boy grew. That is the first piece of forgotten knowledge, and it is so simple we have buried it under machines. They never trained a muscle in isolation. They practiced the exact task, controlling living, pulling animals with the whole body, under a load that climbed year after year. The body has no choice but to answer a demand like that. Bone thickens, tendons toughen. Muscle builds exactly where the strain lands. They became strong in the precise shape the job required, because the job itself was the training. But did they only get strong by racing? Almost, and the exception is just as revealing. Behind every driver stood a coach the Romans literally called a doctor, a master trainer who drilled technique, horsemanship, and conditioning for years before a boy was ever trusted in a real race. Some started as young as 12. The factions were, in effect, the first athletic academies in history. Stables, physicians, grooms, and trainers together in one place, out on the vast open ground where all of Rome went to harden their bodies, running, wrestling, swimming the Tiber, throwing and lifting stones. A charioteer grew up steeped in that daily physical culture, then narrowed all of it into the one task that would define his body. But here is what we never find: any sign of a charioteer chasing a number on a lift the way we would today. He didn't build the body in order to race. Racing built the body, and rehearsing it under a coach on heavier and heavier teams built it more. The skill and the strength were the same thing. So what, exactly, did wearing 4 horses build? Start with the hands. The reins ran from 4 horses' mouths back to the driver's hands and waist, and they were never still. A team at a gallop is a living engine, constantly surging and drifting, and the driver had to feel every shift and answer it, easing, gathering, correcting, to keep 4 animals running as one. His hands and forearms worked, hard, the entire race, against a load that fought back without pause. And here's something we've only recently put words to. Grip is not a small thing to be trained in isolation, the way we treat it. A hard grip switches on the whole body. Squeeze with everything you have and you'll feel your forearms, then shoulders, then core, and legs all brace in sympathy. By forging a grip that could hold and shape 4 horses for miles, the charioteer built a body that turned the hands into the trigger for total body force. It's why the strongest people today still train heavy carries and holds, not curls. But the hands were only the relay. The real steering wheel was somewhere else. Because the reins were tied to his waist, the entire force of the team passed straight through his torso. He did not turn the chariot with his arms. He turned it with his body, bracing, then leaning his weight into the line he wanted, which means his core spent the whole race resisting 4 horses trying to fold him forward, twist him sideways, and rip him off his feet. Picture a man in a tug of war, leaning back against the rope and holding that lean, except the rope is tied to his spine. The other end is 4 horses, and the ground beneath him is bucking. That is a standing, moving plank under a living load. The deep muscles of the trunk and the long columns of muscle either side of the spine fire as hard as they can to keep him from being folded forward or wrung sideways, while his hips and legs drive the whole effort down into the platform. He had to hold that, then move with control, then lock down again, hundreds of times, while his lower back and hips soaked up every shock the cart threw upward at 40 miles an hour. Do that for years, and the body answers exactly where the strain lands. The spinal muscles thicken, the connective tissue toughens like cable, and the back becomes armor. That is the most powerful kind of core strength there is, and it has almost nothing to do with crunches. It is the strength to brace, to lock the trunk so force passes through it without breaking it, and to refuse to be twisted or folded by a load trying to do both. We have names for it now: anti-rotation, isometric bracing, the trunk strength that actually stabilizes the spine and transfers power from the ground to the hands. It builds a midsection that is genuinely strong, not just one that looks the part. The charioteer trained nothing else but that, every second he raced. And every bit of it happened on a platform that was actively trying to throw him off. On solid ground, holding back a ton of horse is hard enough. On a flexing plank at speed, it's a different problem entirely, because now he had to produce all that force and keep from falling at the very same time. And this is the part almost everyone misses about strength. Balance isn't a soft skill you add on top of being strong. It is the thing that lets strength exist at all. Force has to travel from the ground, up through the body, into the load. If the base underneath is unstable, the body quietly refuses to push hard, because it won't fire with everything it has from a platform it doesn't trust. You cannot shoot a cannon from a canoe, so a body that can stay rock steady on a moving, bucking surface can put out far more usable power than a bigger body that wobbles. The charioteer's balance wasn't separate from his strength. It was the thing that let him use it. And he built that balance the only way it can truly be built, by being forced to. The springing floor, the speed, the brutal turns, the constant nearness of death made his body fire off hundreds of tiny corrections every second. Ankles, hips, and deep core, reading the platform and the horses and answering before his conscious mind could even catch up. That's the nervous system, coordination, stability, and reaction speed. The wiring that lets a body command its strength precisely and instantly, exactly where it's needed. It's why their power was so complete. Not big in one place, but balanced, stable, and usable everywhere at once. Now, a body worked that hard has to be fed and rebuilt. And here, the charioteers did something very deliberate. We know less about exactly what a driver ate than we'd like, but we know the world he ate in, and the one rule his sport forced on him. The Roman athlete's plate was built on grain, barley, and wheat as porridge and bread, beans and lentils, olive oil, cheese, vegetables and fruit, a little fish sauce for salt, and wine, cut so heavily with water it was mostly water. High in carbohydrate to fuel relentless training, high in fiber, mostly plants, with just enough protein, and almost no sugar as we know it, nothing to spike the body or pile on soft weight. But the charioteer needed something specific from that food, and it's the opposite of what you'd guess. Compare him to the gladiator. The gladiator deliberately ate himself fat because they carbo-loaded on grain and beans to build a layer of fat over the muscle. That fat was armor. It padded the nerves and blood vessels, so a slashing wound bled spectacularly for the crowd without killing the man. The charioteer could afford none of that. Every extra pound was a pound the horses had to drag and a pound that slowed his turn. He lived and died by power to weight, so he ate to fuel the work and rebuild the body, and not one bite more. Lean, not bulky, because his sport punished fat the way the arena rewarded it. And then there's the strangest thing they drank. Roman writers tell us the charioteers had a recovery tonic, and it was boiled goat dung, sometimes dried and ground into their drink. It sounds like madness, and it probably tasted worse, but it was almost certainly chased for its minerals. The driver's grim version of the ash tonic the gladiators drank to fortify battered bone. A body pounded that hard needed to rebuild fast, and they reached for whatever they believed would do it and get them back in the chariot. But all the training and all the fuel in the world was still not enough. There was one more thing the strength was useless without: the nerve to use it. Think again about what the job actually asked. To wrap 4 horses around your own waist, stand on a flexing plank with no brakes, and stay calm in the middle of a 12-chariot stampede, knowing the knife in your belt is there. For the moment, it all goes wrong. No amount of muscle does that for you. It takes a trained mind, focus that doesn't break, and the discipline to hold your nerve when every instinct is screaming. The body follows the mind, and a charioteer's strength meant nothing until the mind was steady enough to apply it at full speed, on the edge of death, lap after lap. So step back and see the whole machine. A sport that tied a living, fighting load to a man's body, and in doing so, built a strength that was total. Grip and forearms to hold the engine, a core and back that were the real steering wheel, legs and balance to survive the platform, reflexes wired sharp enough to cheat death, all of it fueled by a lean working diet that fed the effort without padding the frame, and all of it held together by a mind that refused to flinch. Not one of those pieces works alone. Take anyone away, and the man comes off the chariot, and that is the lesson worth carrying out of the ancient world. We have been taught that strength is built one muscle at a time in a mirror against a bar that never fights back. The charioteer is proof of the opposite. The most complete strength a human can build comes from controlling unstable, living, awkward loads with the whole body at once, from carrying and bracing and holding against things that resist you, from eating to fuel the work instead of to soften it, and from training the nerve to stay calm while you do. He had no gym. He had a task that demanded everything, all at the same time, and his body rose to meet it. The ancient way exists to recover what was lost. If this changed how you think about what strength even is, the next time you train, reach for the load that fights back and use your whole body to master it. You already know what to do.